Welcome to Project Management. In this video, I will talk about how to properly define a project before it even starts. The early stages of developing the outline of a project serve to ensure that all tasks are identified and that all participants of the project have a good understanding of what is to be done. Once the outline and the details are defined, work can be scheduled, budget can be allocated, and the baseline information can be later used for project progress monitoring and control. There are generally 5 steps for defining a project. Step 1 is defining the project scope. Step 2 is establishing project priorities. Step 3 is to create the work breakdown structure, or WBS. Step 4 is to integrate the work breakdown structure with the organizational breakdown structure, or OBS. Step 5 is to input the work breakdown structure and the organizational breakdown structure into the project management information system, such as Microsoft Project. We will dedicate this entire video to explaining these 5 steps. A poorly defined scope is one of the most frequently mentioned barriers to project success. So the first step toward project success is to properly define the project scope. The project scope is the definition of the end result of the project, a product or service for the customer. The project scope statement can be used to clearly define the deliverables for the end user. It can also be used by the project manager and participants as a planning tool for measuring project success. One of the aspects of the project scope is that the overall project objective should meet your customer's needs. It should contain the information of what, when, and how much. For example, a project objective could be developing a software program within 3 years at a cost no more than $1.5 million to automatically translate sentences from English to French. Another aspect of the project scope is the deliverables. Project deliverables could take various forms. A deliverable could be a document, product, equipment, software program, result, or approval. The deliverables could also be different at different stages of the project. For example, at the early design phase, it could be a list of specifications. In the middle phase of a project, it could be a prototype software program. At the final phase of the project, it could be the approved software program and the user's manual. Project scope also needs to list the planned project milestones. A project milestone is a significant event in a project that represents rough estimates of time, cost, and resources for the project. The milestone schedule is built using the deliverables to identify major segments of work and an end date. For example, finishing testing a prototype by November 1st can be a milestone of a software development project. The project scope should contain technical requirements of the product or service to ensure the performance of the project. Technical requirements typically clarify either the deliverables or define the performance specifications. For example, some technical requirements for Samsung's smartphone Galaxy S10 are having a 6.1-inch screen, running Android version 9 with a RAM of 8 GB and a storage of 256 GB. The limits of scope should be defined. Failure to do so can lead to false expectations and spending resources and time on the wrong problems. It will also lead to scope creep, which will be introduced later in this video. Limits and exclusions define the boundary of the project by clearly stating what is included and what is not. For example, the work hours are from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. for a construction project to avoid disturbing the neighbors. or data will be collected by the client, not the contractor, for data analytics project. The final product of defining the project scope is a scope statement. Sometimes it's also called the statement of work, or SOW. The scope statement must be reviewed with the customer to achieve mutual understanding and agreement of expectation. Is the customer getting what he or she desires in deliverables? Does the project definition identify key accomplishments, budgets, timing, and performance requirements? Are questions of limits and exclusions covered? Clear communication in all these issues is imperative to avoid misunderstanding and complaints. Let's see an example of a project scope statement. The project objective is to build a custom house within 6 months in Binghamton at a cost not exceeding $300,000. The deliverables of this project include a 2,000 square foot house with 2 bathrooms, 3 bedrooms, 2 floors, a garage, home appliances such as a range, an oven, a microwave, a dishwasher, and a gas furnace with programmable thermostat. There are 6 planned project milestones. The project team should receive the approved permit to build the house by April 1st. The concrete foundation should be done by May 15th. The walls and roof should be mounted by June 15th. The plumbing job should be done by July 15th. The electric wiring should be done by August 31st. The final cleaning and project inspection should be passed by September 30th. Building the house needs to meet many technical requirements. Here I just list some of them. For example, the home must meet local building codes. All windows and doors must pass the National Fenestration Rating Council Class 40 energy ratings. Exterior wall insulation must meet an R factor of 21. Ceiling insulation must meet an R factor of 38. Floor insulation must meet an R factor of 25. The garage should accommodate 2 large-size cars. The house structure must pass seismic stability codes. Some limits and exclusions of this project are listed here. The home will be built to the specifications and design of the original blueprints provided by the homeowners, in this case, a couple named Yong and Jenny Smith. Homeowners are responsible for landscaping and not the construction team. Refrigerator is not included among kitchen appliances. Air conditioning is not included, but pre-wiring is included. The contractor reserves the right to contract out some of the services. The contractor is finally responsible for the subcontracted work. Site work will be limited to Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. No nighttime work, so it doesn't disturb the neighbors. Finally, this scope statement must be reviewed and signed by John and Jenny Smith. A scope statement that is too broad will likely lead to scope creep. Scope creep is the tendency for the project scope to change, usually expand, over time due to changing requirements, specifications, and priorities. Multiple minor refinements may eventually build up to be major scope changes, and that can cause problems. Scope changes may occasionally bring positive benefits to the project. For example, adding a small feature to a product may result in a huge competitive advantage when it's released to the market. Or a small change in the production process may get the product to market 1 month early, leading to a higher market share. However, in most cases, scope creep is associated with negative outcomes like added costs and possible project delays. Frequent changes eventually wear down team motivation and cohesiveness. Changes can be annoying because they may disrupt the project rhythm and lower productivity. watch this video titled The Wasa, a true story of scope creep. Poor scope statements are one of the major causes of scope creep. To minimize scope creep, the key is to create a formal change management system. The system should clearly document the impacts of the changes on the budget and schedule. The formal approval process may scare away some frequent but trivial change requests. But the best defense against scope creep is a well-defined scope statement that details not only what the project is, but also what the project is not, which can avoid misinterpretations later. The second step of defining a project is to establish project priorities. Quality and the ultimate success of a project are traditionally defined as meeting or exceeding the expectations of the customer and upper management in terms of cost, time, and scope of the project. Scope is also called performance sometimes. Their relationship can be explained using the project management triangle. The quality of work is constrained by the project's budget, schedule, and scope. The project manager can trade between these constraints to some extent. Changes in one constraint necessitate changes in others to compensate. Otherwise, project quality will suffer. For example, a project can be completed faster by increasing budget. It can also be achieved by cutting scope. Similarly, increasing scope may require equivalent increases in budget and schedule. Cutting budget without adjusting schedule or scope will lead to lower quality. One of the primary jobs of a project manager is to manage the trade-offs among time, cost, and scope. To do so, project managers must define and understand the nature of the priorities of the project. One technique found in practice that is useful for this purpose is completing a priority matrix for the project to identify that out of these three criteria, time, cost, and scope, which one is constrained, which should be enhanced, and which can be accepted. In this example, the scope is constrained. It means the scope of the project is fixed and cannot be changed. Time is enhanced, which means the project manager should take advantage of every opportunity to shorten the project schedule. Cost is accepted, which means when trade-offs have to be made, it's acceptable to go over budget to make sure the quality of the project doesn't sacrifice. There are likely to be natural limits to the extent managers can constrain, enhance, or accept any one criterion. For example, it may be desirable to finish a project 1 month early, but after that, further shortening the project duration may be prohibitively expensive. The third step of defining a project is to create the work breakdown structure, or WBS. A work breakdown structure is a hierarchical outline that maps the products and work elements involved in a project. It defines the relationship among the project, its deliverables, sub-deliverables, and finally the work packages. Now in this example, this project is to develop a smartphone. Major deliverables could be the phone's hardware and its software. Under hardware, we may have sub-deliverables like the cameras, the battery, the touch screen, the CPU, the memory, the antenna, etc. Under software, we may have sub-deliverables like the operating system and apps. The camera's sub-deliverable involves 2 work packages. The battery sub-deliverable involves 2 work packages. Similarly, other sub-deliverables such as the touchscreen, the CPU, the memory, and the antenna can also be divided into smaller work packages. The work packages are the lowest level of the work breakdown structure. They are the basic units used for planning, scheduling, and controlling the project. A work package defines a work or task to be performed. It identifies time, cost, resources, personnel needed to complete the work. It's also used as a monitoring point for measuring how well the project is doing. The fourth step of defining a project is to create the organizational breakdown structure, or OBS. An organizational breakdown structure depicts how the firm is organized to discharge its work and responsibility for a project. This diagram shows what it looks like when we integrate the organizational breakdown structure with the work breakdown structure. The top part is the original work breakdown structure. The bottom part is the organizational breakdown structure. For example, the organization is divided into 4 different departments: design, production, testing, and outsourcing. The cameras involve 2 separate work packages. Each work package is responsible by an individual employee from a different department. The other part of the diagram can be read in a similar way. Cost accounts are located at the intersections of the work breakdown structure and the organizational breakdown structure. A cost account is a group of similar work packages that are used for allocating resources and budget, monitoring progress and responsibilities. In this example, each cost account involves just 1 work package. After the work breakdown structure and the organizational breakdown structure are integrated, we will code this diagram using numbers. For example, at the highest final product level, we give it a code 1.0. 2 of its deliverables are coded 1.1 and 1.2. Sub-deliverables are further coded 1.1.1, 1.1.2, and so on. This is the default coding system in many project management software programs, such as Microsoft Project. Letters can also be used in the coding system in place of numbers. The coding can later be shown in Microsoft Project, like in this picture. You just need to go to the Format tab and make sure the outline number box is checked. This coding system will allow project reports to be conveniently consolidated at any level in the organizational structure. An alternative to the work breakdown structure and the organizational breakdown structure is called the responsibility matrix, or the responsibility chart. It is suitable for small projects. It lists project activities and participants who are responsible for these activities. This is the responsibility matrix for a weekend family camping trip project. The project involves 9 tasks and 4 family members. Letter R means responsible and letter S means supporting. Mother is responsible for research the potential camping sites. She will be helped by son and daughter. Mother will also make the final decision on which camping site to go based on discussion with father, son, and daughter. After the decision is made, father will pay and reserve the site. The rest of the matrix can be read in a similar fashion. So it's very clear to see the tasks and responsibilities of all the team members. This is the responsibility matrix for a software development project. It involves 6 deliverables and 5 employees. There are 5 different responsibilities instead of 2. For the first deliverable, specifications, Debbie takes the lead and is responsible for working with the client and writing up the specifications. She will be supported and assisted by Tom and Ethan. For the design deliverable, Tom will lead and be responsible for the task. He will consult Debbie and keep Anna notified. Anna is the project manager. Ethan will be in charge of developing the prototype of the software with help from Tom. The prototype will have to be approved by Anna. The rest of this responsibility matrix can be read in a similar way. Communication is vital for project management. It is a key component in coordinating and tracking project schedules, issues, and corrective actions. Poor communication is a major contributor to project failure. The communication plan is usually created by the project manager and the project team in the early stage of project planning. The plan maps out the flow of information to different stakeholders and becomes the integral part of the overall project plan. When creating the communication plan, we need to answer the following questions. What information needs to be collected and when? Who will receive the information? What methods will be used to gather and store the information? What are the limits? Who has access to certain kinds of information? When will the information be communicated? How will it be communicated? How and what is communicated should be based on the stakeholders' interest and power. By identifying stakeholders and prioritizing them on power-interest map, we can plan the type of information and the frequency of the communications needed. For example, top management needs to know how the project is progressing, whether it's encountering critical problems and the extent to which project goals are being realized. This information is required so they can make strategic decisions and manage the portfolio of projects. Project team members need to see schedules, task lists, specifications, and the like, so they know what needs to be done next. External groups like suppliers need to know any changes in the schedule and performance requirements of the components they are providing. On a typical project, you want to manage closely the professionals doing the work on the top right corner. You want to satisfy senior management and project sponsor on the top left corner with periodical updates. On the bottom right corner, unions and operations managers interested in the project would be some people you would want to keep informed. You would only need to provide general information to the legal, public relations, and other departments on the bottom left corner of this chart. Based on different people's needs, information to be communicated may come from different sources. Examples are project status reports, deliverable issues, scope changes, team status meetings, key decisions, accepted request changes, corrective actions, milestone reports, etc. This is a project communication plan example. The row on the top shows what information to be communicated, the target audience, when to communicate, the method of communication, and who will provide the information. For example, the project status report will be sent to project team and the customer weekly in form of email by the project manager. The milestone report will be sent to the senior management and project manager bi-monthly in form of both email and hard copy by the project management office, and so on. The advantage of establishing this communication plan is that instead of passively responding to information requests, you are proactively controlling the flow of information. This reduces confusion and unnecessary interruptions. Okay, in this video, we talked about key elements of a project scope statement, how to create the work breakdown structure and organizational breakdown structure. We also talked about how to create the responsibility matrix and the communication plan for a project. This is Yong Wang. I'll see you in the next video.